What is going on, YouTube people? Today, remember that whole GameStop PSA collaboration? And a lot of people were like, who would use GameStop to grade cards? I would never take my stuff there. This is foolish. What are they all doing? Well, fast forward about a month and a half or so later, and the data is in. Well, at least a portion of it. We could draw some conclusions that it seems to be, at least a month or so in, a roaring success. And in fact, so successful, Nat Turner is now on the board of GameStop. On top of it, we got a little bit of details out on Monday. A few people DM'd this to me, and I saw Sports Card Madness did a video on this as well. GameStop had a SEC filing, and in there gave us a little bit of details. Now, I had heard through the hobby grapevine that the number of cards that PSA got from GameStop in the first month or so was around 85 to 90,000. I couldn't track that down or back it up with anything, so I just rolled with it and said, okay, sure. But that number does seem to be at least accurate enough-ish. According to this document, they had 1.53 million in transactions so far. And their two primary grading services are between $16 and $20 a card. And from what I have been able to piece together, a bulk, and this is not surprising, this is the least surprising thing ever, a bulk of those submissions are on the TCG side of the space. So if you do some quick napkin math and divide those numbers out, you very quickly get very close to that 85 to 90K range. So that number seems extremely plausible based off that 1.3 or $1.53 million number. So to put that in perspective, in 1 month, and that is really a trial month because it wasn't even fully wide opened at first. So let's call it maybe a month and a half. This thing went wide. They pulled in 100K cards, or let's call it 90K. I think that's probably closer to more accurate. 90K cards. In October 2024, Beckett graded 50K total. That means PSA got almost double the submissions of Beckett just from GameStop. And what is that? A little under half of what CGC did in a month. They got just from GameStop submissions. Let's assume they could get that up to 100K cards a month and have that fairly consistent. That is 1.2 million cards a year extra just coming from GameStop. I am curious if we pull up, I did not plan this. If we look at last year's PSA numbers, 1.2 million is what SGC graded for the entire year. Beckett did 780K all of 2023, and CGC did 1.7 million. Now, in a couple months, we'll get updated numbers on this. But if they could get 100K a month from GameStop, that means they would be getting just as many cards from GameStop that SGC graded in the entire year of 2023. Let that just sink in for a second. When you look at the numbers every month on the gem rate stuff, and we look at the end of the year stuff, but sometimes certain things just hit that put into perspective just how big of a beast and a behemoth PSA actually is. And the fact that SGC, which they now own, by the way, was basically their second biggest competitor in the space. CGC in the TCG space, maybe a little bit. But that they would get as many cards from GameStop in a year, potentially, this is all hypothetical, that their second biggest competitor, or that their biggest competitor would get in an entire year. That is wild stuff when you really think about it. Now, will the numbers sustain? Don't know. I think they probably do, assuming things go well. This is just the initial submission. But I have to imagine a lot of people did it as a test market of, okay, I'll try it out and then see how it goes. And remember, GameStop has like a bajillion stores. If you mapped it out, it's probably not even that many cards per store. So as this thing continues to go wide, as long as people have positive experiences, I could see this continuing to snowball. Don't underestimate the barrier to entry to grading. I know for us sitting here, me sitting behind my desk making YouTube content about cards and collectibles, and you all sitting in front of an iPad or an iPhone or TV or computer or whatever, consuming hobby or card collectible content, submitting a card for grading is probably like, on a scale of 1 to 10, like a 1 in the ease factor. Like, of course, you're like, oh, it's the easiest thing to do ever. You fill out the form, you ship your cards off, yada, yada, send them some money, and the cards come back magically. It's all great. You would be surprised by how many people are intimidated by that process. And hey, I get it. It could be a little bit tricky if you don't have any idea what you're doing. You've never done it before. You think it's this big complex thing. It's really not, but people build it up to being this big thing. And it is a barrier to entry for folks, especially when you look at the target market of the GameStop audience, which is probably casuals and kids. And, little Timmy and little Sue go off to school with their Pikachus and Charizards, and they come back and they talk about how, Johnny and Timmy had theirs graded, and he wants his graded. He wants it in the 10 holder like everybody else's, and they want to send cards in the grade. And you got mom and dad that got a billion things going on in their life. The last thing they have time to do is figure out how to grade cards. But now they find out that they could just pay GameStop $16, drop a couple cards off, and a few months later they come back. That's pretty appealing. It really is. You also factor in, you don't need PSA memberships. You don't need minimum quantities. You don't have to mess around with any of that stuff. I could see how this is going to be fairly successful. When they first rolled this out, I was pretty bullish on it. I had a feeling this was probably going to be pretty okay for them. I know a lot of people in the comments were like, I would never use GameStop. You're a crazy person. And you're right. I would never use GameStop either. But as I stated in that initial video when this news was announced, this is not targeted for us. We are not the target market for this. And GameStop continues to, good, bad, or indifferent, basically merge themselves into a hobby company. They are, for lack of a better term, almost like a generic LCS if you don't have one. You could do grading through them. They sell TCG cards. They are starting to dabble in hobby product. You could I ordered my Topps Chrome Mega Boxes. Guess where I ordered them from? GameStop. They still had them in stock when I was looking for them, and I ordered them from there. I had heard rumors that they are beginning to sell hobby boxes as well. I know when Topps Chrome Star Wars came out, there were people buying full hobby boxes of Star Wars from GameStop. Now, I don't know how wide that expansion will go, if they'll stick more for the non-sport side of things with that. I don't know. But GameStop continues to carve itself out as a player in this space, if you will. They might not be the most major player, but not everybody has an LCS by them. Not everyone has ease of access to a PSA group submitter. There's a bajillion GameStops in the country. So I think this collaboration is going to continue to go very well for PSA, and probably going to funnel them a decent chunk of cards. Now, when this agreement was initially made, I don't believe it was exclusive to PSA, but I have to imagine with Nat on the board. And the other thing that PSA has, where a lot of the companies don't, is a tech advantage. PSA can throw tech at it and make the software work, where a lot of the smaller companies, them to do whatever they need to do on the tech on the back end side to integrate these systems would probably be a big lift for them. Not that it probably wasn't a big lift for PSA either, but they have the staff, the support, and the finances to be able to take a leap like that more than some of the other companies. And so far, this looks like I'm a little too early to call it a home run, but it's at least a double or triple for sure. I am sure they are thrilled with 80 to 100K cards coming in just the first month with very little to no promotion. And we all know what's going to happen, especially for the crowd that they're going for. Little Sue's going to go to school and say, well, I got my cards graded at GameStop. And then that's going to make the rounds around the school, the lunch table, whatever. and then more parents will start talking about it, and I would have to imagine it'll, kind of self-generate its own buzz in those circles about where to get their Pikachus graded at. So that's a lot of cards going in every month. And that's the other thing too, is how many companies could handle if all of a sudden you threw an extra 100K cards a month at CGC, SGC, or Beckett. Could they even handle that when that's almost their entire grading volume in a month? I don't know that they could. And then now GameStop looks like the bad guy because all of a sudden they're the ones holding the cards hostage, even though it's the grading company. Let's be real, people blame whoever is standing in front of them, even if it is not directly that company's fault. GameStop would take the heat if Little Sue's cards went off to get graded and didn't come back for 9 months. The GameStop employee, the GameStop manager is going to be the one that got yelled at, not the grading company, because they could walk in and yell at GameStop. So very successful launch to this. We will see how this goes as the months goes on. There's really no way for us to get this sort of information other than, these random filings, or just, if someone talks about it from PSA directly. But needless to say, off the get, this seems like a pretty strong start. It'll be interesting to see as we move forward how the TCG numbers morph on the monthly grading reports from our old pal GemRate. Do those numbers start to shift a little bit? Do we see a TCG bounce back up on the PSA numbers? So that's all I got. Nat Turner now on the board of GameStop. PSA/GameStop collaboration seems to be a pretty big hit out of the gate, and we will see where things go from here as PSA continues to worm their way in to all these other companies. We talked about it a few months ago. They are the spoke on a wagon wheel. They are the center of a wagon wheel with all the spokes going out and making themselves needed by as many ancillary companies as possible. And it really helps protect them against things going sideways because they have so many different angles. They have an eBay partnership, Fanatics partnership, GameStop partnership. You got all these little tendrils out there. So smart business by them for sure. So we'll see where it all goes. Curious for your thoughts and comments, as always, down below. Catch you on the next one. Peace.